So this is something that's been a long time coming. It's time to actually show off all the systems and the games that I have in my quote-unquote game room. This isn't everything that I have. I've got a bunch more stuff in the living room and in the bedroom, but I'm still trying to organize those rooms and to have some level of organization that I'm happy with. At least in here, everything is organized pretty much how I want it for right now. So, if you're ready to listen to a long, probably 20-minute ramble about all the stuff I have in here, we might as well begin. So, first shelf isn't too much important. I've just got a case full of batteries, and my old N64 control, the original one I had since I think 98, 99, I suppose. Found this last year. We're going through stuff through Christmas, and yeah, as you can see, it's a little bit, it's definitely beat up over the years. I'm trying to get this thing back in order. Like I got replaced the analog stick, but the Z button is still a little bit too spongy. That needs to be replaced. So as we go down, we've got the Mattel Intellivision with the lovely wood grain panel from the 1970s. I'm sure is a classic, I suppose. We've got the Xbox 360 with the Kinect, which I don't really use because don't really like the Kinect all that much. We have the PlayStation 3 down here, which it's almost camouflaged because the shelf was black. So, but nope, it's actually there. Nice PS3. We've got the Sega Dreamcast over here. We've got the Microsoft Xbox, the original Xbox. Can't say Xbox One anymore unless you're referring to the quote-unquote new Xbox console I got. You got the Nintendo Wii over here with a hard drive that I have various ROMs and stuff hooked up to it that I had modded when I was in Korea back in 2009. Or I think it was 2010. Anyway. And on the other side of the shelf over here, we've got the PlayStation 2, the original PlayStation 2, with a nice silver DualShock 2 controller. The shelf that's down here, we've got a system I've looked at before, the Sharp Twin Famicom, which plays Japanese Nintendo games and disk system games. We've got the Nintendo GameCube with a Game Boy player attached to it, so I can play Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance games. We've got the... Now let me get this out of here so you can actually see it. We've got the Sega Saturn with an action replay cart that allows me to play Japanese Saturn games if I want to. And then we got... a Super Nintendo. This is the I guess the Model 2 or the SNES Junior that plays all my Super Nintendo games, and specifically modded to where I can play Japanese Super Famicom games, as we'll see in a little bit shortly. And, sorry about that. Oh, this is a true professional here. He lied. So this is what I've dubbed the Sega Voltron. We've got the original Sega Genesis. Well, not the original. This is the Model 2 Sega Genesis. We've got the Model 2 Sega CD. And up on top, we've got the Genesis 32X, which, yeah, so that was their way of trying to, I guess, lengthen the Genesis lifespan, and boy, that went well for them. Sega CD, not too... Sega CD, I kind of like it. 32X... was kind of a failure there, so to speak. And up on top here, a ice blue Nintendo 64 with expansion pack inside. Yeah, I just got the ice blue one. I've been kind of thinking about trying to get all the colored N64s that were released, but I just don't want to spend all the money for it at this point. If I find it for a cheap price, I probably will. And up here, we've got an Atari 520 STFM. Not so much a gaming system per se. It was pretty much a old computer back in, about to say late 80s, early 90s. Supposed to be used for stuff for word processing and that, but it's mainly used for games and that stuff. I actually got a whole bunch of floppies in my living room, but not my living room, my bedroom. But I don't really have this hooked up all that often. It's kind of finicky because the disk drive is trying to go, but it's still a nice little thing to have. And not much up here, save for the Master Sword statue that I got from Breath of the Wild, and a random Super Nintendo controller that just found at a yard sale for $2. So, so that's all the systems. Now, how about the video games? Well, slow pan over to the left. Yeah, kind of a lot. So much so, in fact, that if we look at the door right here, I can't actually open the door the entire way because I've got so many shelves full of games. So, hey, what are you gonna do? I guess that's the way it is, I suppose. Suppose I need a bigger room, but that'll probably come soon. So, anyway, let's go back over here and rotate it for a second. So over here, we pretty much got what I call my import slash handheld section. These are pretty much just import games from Japan along with a bunch of handheld stuff I have. So up here, we've got a bunch of boxed Famicom games or just, Nintendo games. And we got some of the more box stuff here along with some loose games. Had to put some end labels on these because my Japanese isn't really all that good, so yeah, end labels probably help. Then we got the Famicom Disk System games, which I'll get one out here. Yep, just these nice little cases that just hold a floppy disk for storing all the Disk System games. Don't have as many. I'd like to get more, but with the way the Disk System is and some of these games, some of them don't exactly work the way they should anymore. But at least I've tested all these and verified that they're pretty much good to go. Alright, and now we got boxed Super Famicom games, or Japanese Super Nintendos. I found these really cheap on eBay. It's like, there's like 100 games with these stuff for like $100. So like, yes please, I'll take it, that stuff. Nothing too spectacularly rare. That was Dragon Quest V and that stuff. Then there's Space Invaders, which that's kind of a classic. But and then we got down here just a whole lot of Super Famicom games. I usually just get these things on eBay. They sell them in a lot for pretty cheap prices, and just get them over here. There's some pretty good titles, and then there's other stuff that really can't play all that much because like I said, my Japanese skills are kind of lacking, but it comes with the territory, I suppose. Up here is just basically a bunch of Game Boy systems and various handheld accessories. A couple Game Boys over here. Super Game Boy for the Super Nintendo. The super wide gear lens for the Game Gear. Game Boy Advances, and this lovely fanny pack for the Nintendo Game Boy. Yeah, I know, early 90s and that stuff, but I ain't getting rid of it. So we got more Super Famicom games over here. And then we get to our Japanese Sega Saturn games in these nice little CD cases. And we got more of them down here. Actually, some really good titles like the Lunar Games and Magic Knife Ray Earth, which you try to get the English version of that. It's rare. It's pretty damn rare and pretty damn expensive. Japanese version is significantly cheaper, but then again, I can't read Japanese, so there you go. Then over here, a lot of these aren't particularly labeled as such. These are just Japanese Sony PlayStation games. Again, don't seek these out too often because I don't really have a good method to playing these. Because I don't have a mod chip installed on my PlayStation, and some of these basically, like, you have to put in, like, some type of disc game, keep the disc open, let it spin, then swap it out. Kind of a fiddly process. So that's why I don't go for these too much. Then we got Japanese Sega Dreamcast games. Japanese Sega Dreamcast games. This is a little bit easier to actually get running on a regular NTSC system. Plus, I like some of these designs, like Resident Evil Code Veronica with Biohazard. This lovely, lovely case. I kind of like unique cases like this. I'm a sucker for them. And then we got a couple of Japanese PlayStation 2 games and one Japanese Xbox games. Except this one. This is actually a PAL version of Dead or Alive 2. I just found this at a thrift shop for like $2. I'm like, well, this is kind of rare. I might as well just grab this. So I did, of course. Then going into our handout section, we've got a smattering of Nintendo 3DS games and Nintendo regular DS games. Kind of found a lot of these just for really, really cheap. I said, well, they're not really sold anymore, so people are just trying to get rid of stuff. I'm like, well, I will take these kindly. Then we have the one random Japanese PSP game, which is just I think it's like Namco Museum Volume 1. Again, I just found this at thrift stores. Don't know how these get to thrift stores, but I'm not complaining too much. Always love to have these in my collections. But yeah, bunch of Japanese PSP games. And more stacked horizontally. If you want to know why the weird stacking for some of these games is this, I'm trying to fit these games as best I can on these shelves. Because I really don't want to get any more shelves, but as more games come, it's going to be kind of hard to deal with. And then over here, just a few random boxed Game Gear games. Which is weird is that I found these at Amazon, selling them for like a ridiculously cheap price. I'm like, well, might as well grab these. Game Gear is actually a system I had as a child, and I really have a soft spot for the Game Gear games. So I was really glad to have these. I got more, as we'll see shortly. So this is just a N64 and PlayStation shelf, I guess. We open up here, and obviously got a whole bunch of loose N64 games. Reason why you have a whole bunch of these games in here is that these are games I have the most memories with, and you know, we either rented these a whole lot when I was younger, or you know, had these and played them to death. Like obviously Mario Kart 64, we played that to death. Let's get zoomed in here. Diddy Kong Racing, Beetle Adventure Racing, Mischief Makers, Super Smash Brothers. Oh, fantastic games. I said, we love these. That's why they get their own little nice shelf right here. And for the PlayStation games, yeah, just a bunch of PlayStation games. I really need to get this shelf organized, because it's not like all the good games are in here. Well, some stuff. Legacy King Soul Reaver. I remember getting it for Dreamcast and absolutely loving it. MDK, Tenchu, Threads of Fate, the original Tomb Raider and Tomb Raider 2, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, Ape Escape, and then down here is just basically a whole bunch of various memory cards and that I've got for the PlayStation and PlayStation 2. Nice little place to set them all up. So, now we got to go over to this shelf right here. Well, there's more shelves coming, but... So we've got PlayStation games stored up here, or PlayStation 3 games, in this ridiculous trident way of stacking everything. It's weird, but it works. And we got Sega CD games. May notice with a lot of these Sega CD games and these long box games, I basically have these in box protectors, just basically to keep them together, and in case if I drop these guys, they don't break and shatter in a million pieces, as these cases tend to do, because they're kind of brittle, so to speak. It's like you drop one and they'll just shatter in a million pieces. I've already had that happen a couple times. Kind of annoying. And over here, some boxed 32X games. Not as many, because they only released about 40 32X games to my knowledge, so it's like you look at these 6 here, and with a couple loose ones I almost have about 25% of the library. So, and right here, Sega Saturn games. I would love to have more Sega Saturn games, but because the system didn't sell too well in the States, it's getting harder and harder to get some of these, even loose. Some of these can go for a hefty price. Like, say, what's a good one? Let's see, what's that? I had one. Oh, here we go. Albert Odyssey. I was happy to find this for a nice price a couple years ago, and this is going for I want to say at least 100 online now, case and manual and all. So it's happy to have some of these games, but some of them are just going to be even more harder to find as it goes on. So we got more Sega Saturn games over here. And then there's an oddity, a few long box PlayStation 1 games. Yeah, they used to come out in the long box version, and then they decided, we're going to scrap that and just go with the CD version. So these are kind of harder to find. I don't see these too often, but when I do, obviously, I pick them up. And then we got your boxed and television games. Really easy to still find these on eBay or even in a garage sale and that stuff. So I remember last year getting like a whole bunch of these games with the system for like $20. So really, really good deal. And you could still find these for a couple bucks a piece. Nothing too impressive. One I was really happy about was Astro Smash. Somebody recommended that to me. I got it, and it's actually a really, really fun game. Almost worth the price of the system itself. So, moving on to this small little shelf right here. This is more of my handheld games. I've got the original Super Nintendo up here, along with a few games that I've gotten recently that I haven't been able to inventory yet. So, and with Lock and Key, we open this up and we'll see. So we've got Game Boy games on top, and more Game Boy games, more Game Boy stuff, and then we go into Game Boy Colors, and a whole bunch of Game Boy Advances. And you may notice that it's hard to keep these in alphabetical order because they don't have any sort of end labels and that stuff. So it's pretty much, I gotta guess, go look through. It's like, oh, I'm looking for Zelda stuff, and what's this right here? Oh, Mario Party Advance, that's not what I'm wanting. And then I ended up probably forgetting about it and just end up playing something else. And we'll go to the other side over here, because yes, this thing has two sides. Rotate that around. Yeah. And if I can get this open, I can. Exciting. More Game Boy Advance, Game Gear games, most of these with their shell cases. Some Nintendo DS games I just had loose. The Neo Geo Pocket Color is still in its box. Only got this last September, and I'm really happy I did. I was kind of wanting this when it first came out, but I was happy with my Game Boy Color back then. Really nice system. Has one of the best D-pads ever. It's almost like a mini micro switched joystick. I really, really love it. And we got some more loose DS games. Your Neo Geo Pocket games, loose PlayStation Portable games, and Japanese import Game Boy stuff. Let's see, what is a really nice one that I got? Oh yeah, here we go. This is Mega Man and Bass in the States here, or otherwise known as Rockman and Forte in Japan. This was originally on the Super Nintendo, and then they made a port for Game Boy Advance. Pretty good Mega Man game. Probably like the hardest one ever. And more harder in this one because Screen Crunch. You gotta love it. And then we got some random boxed GBA games. Dragon Ball Advance and Super Street Fighter 2X Challenge and that stuff. I don't know. I lose track of the Street Fighter 2 games. It seems like it's its own series of games. So, now we get to this shelf here, including more lovely stacking that I'm kind of proud of to get in these shelves. We've got a whole bunch of GameCube games. Majorities I just got recently. I found these on a lot on Craigslist for about $400. Really happy to get a whole bunch of these, because a lot of these titles I had loose, but now with the case and that stuff, I can just say I've got them complete now, which is a plus, because I'm trying to get all these CD games mostly complete, because I really don't like to have loose games around. So we get to the end of the GameCube titles, and we got PlayStation 2 titles. Of course, it would be expected, since that was the that sold like at least 100 million systems, so of course there's bound to be a whole bunch of games. And things I just see, in thrift stores for, really, really cheap, because, as I said, it was a popular system, so it's more than likely to be a whole bunch of games for it. But yeah, this will get to a point that I'll, more than likely get so many PS2 games that I'm just going to have just a whole shelf just dedicated to PS2 games. So yeah, we got even more up here. That, and let's see. Well, Ken's in the way, but what are you going to do? And then we got to your original Xbox titles. It seems like with Xbox titles, all I seem to find is just like a whole bunch of sports titles and that stuff. As I said, there was a lot of sports titles for the system. Don't really like those too much, but, with them being as cheap as they are sometimes, I can't really complain. We get down here, more Xbox stuff, and then we go into the Wii titles. Again, it's like, I see these a lot, but, like, a lot of the titles for the Wii are pretty kind of bad. Seems like they all just use the same gimmick of being, like, a whole bunch of party games and, added waggle control connectivity for this stuff. So not something I collect too often, but I find the good games I want, I'm fine with it. And then we go to the Xbox 360. Not as big as I'd like it. I'd like to have more games, but my focus has just been getting stuff that's older than the 360. Mainly PS2, GameCube, N64, Super Nintendo when I can find it. And in the bottom shelf right here, just miscellaneous handheld system stuff. Got the DS, a battery pack for the Game Gear, which really doesn't work anymore. There's a PSP cases, and a couple of GBASPs. This is a Japan one, and this one is a later version released in the States that has a much better screen on it. I absolutely love the thing that play Game Boy Advance games on. And now for the final shelf, which is the biggest shelf of them all. We've got a whole bunch of Sega Genesis games in boxed. I find these easier because mostly still has these old plastic clamshell cases, which really good for storing these games. And on top of the Flareon right here, we just got a couple of loose Sega 32X games, like Virtua Fighter right here. I think it's like Star Wars Arcade and what's the other one? I think it's like a Butterbean fighting game or something. Kind of like Punch-Out, except not. Kind of sucks, actually. And we got more loose Sega Genesis games over here. I actually started collecting Genesis back in 2008 when I was in Texas. Somebody had a Genesis and like 40 games to sale for like $40. I'm like, sure, I'll take it. Why not? So I've slowly expanded the collection over the years. Would like to get some more games, but some of them are getting kind of tough to find. Speaking of stuff that's tough to find, boxed Super Nintendo games. I know all of these I found in a random lot for like a whole bunch of games on OfferUp for about $200. And yeah, stuff like Chrono Trigger here, which the game goes for at least $100 alone just for the game. So it's really nice to have the box. Most of these I don't have the manuals for, so I'm trying to find those for a decent price. And you may have noticed that they all have box protectors on these because, let's see, these Super Nintendo boxes are made with the thinnest cardboard known to man. So I think if you even look at it funny, it just crumbles to dust and that. But you got to do what you can to keep these things in nice, pristine condition. So over here, more Super Nintendo games. All these loose. Some of these are not in the best of conditions, but I take what I can get. If the price is right, I'm willing to take them. Just a whole bunch of Super Nintendo games. I think I'm over. Say I'm close to 300 Super Nintendo games, but I'd have to double check on that. So as we get down here, some boxed N64 games. I didn't really expect to find a whole bunch of these while in Vegas, but I was lucky to do it. Like somebody was just selling a lot of these off, and I was like, well, yes, I will take these. And obviously they have box protectors as well. Was really happy to find this in good condition. Conker's Bad Fur Day. This goes for, let's see, I think boxing that stuff goes for at least 150, 175, maybe 200. And I just got this with a lot of whole other N64 stuff for like 120, so really happy to see that. And more boxed N64 games over here. quite a bit of them, actually. I'm really impressed to have these. Maybe not for some of the best games. It's like, oh, box copy of Madden 64. Oh, who's the pros on that? But I'm still really happy to have a whole bunch of these. And then we have N64 loose titles. And you also may notice I have end labels on these because, well, it makes it a hell of a lot easier for trying to find stuff. I hated where you're trying to look for games and you don't have end labels, so I took the liberty to get some on eBay and just place them on the titles. Really helps when trying to find titles and see about stuff that you don't have. So as we get to the end here, we've got PlayStation 1 games. These I've been finding a hell of a lot lately. And it's weird because I used to have just a CD binder just full of PS1 games for the longest of time. And then I started finding all these games in cases and that. So I was like, well, I might as well try to expand the collection. And boy, expand I have. In fact, the PlayStation 1 has the second... Out of all the titles I have, PlayStation 1 has like the most I have so far. I have about... Let's say I have about over 300 PS1 titles, which is kind of impressive, but I don't think it even makes close to a dent of how many PS1 games came out. I want to say probably something around the lines of 800, 900 titles. I'd have to do a double check, but yeah, I've got a whole lot of PlayStation 1 games. And at the end over here, we've got Sega Dreamcast games. I wish I had a bigger Dreamcast collection, but it's getting really hard to find some of these games for a decent price. Like, you go on eBay and that stuff, and you see a lot of just like the common stuff, and then you try to go for bigger stuff, and it's always a hell of a lot of expense to it. So, oh well, you got to take with what you can get sometimes. And then down here in the very low end, these are just burned Sega Saturn games that I just have. My Saturn has the ability to play burn games. I don't do this all that often, but for some of these games, it's nice to at least try these out and see, like, hey, maybe I want to buy this later on down the line. And then for some of these, only reason I have them is because some of them can get to be pretty pricey when trying to look for them. But that's it as far as the games and that stuff goes. And I actually want to go over here inside the shelf of my closet over here, just show off a few other things. So yeah, a whole box full of random controllers from all kinds of systems. We got stuff from the Saturn, stuff from the N64, stuff from the PlayStation. I haven't really found a best place to store all these, so I figured like, we'll just do like a box, milk crate box, and just store them all in there for right now. We got a couple of power pads here. I've got the original power pad for the Nintendo, and I've got I believe it was a Dance Dance Revolution pad for the PlayStation 2. A whole bunch of various manuals from the PlayStation to Xbox to GameCube to PS2. These are for my loose titles I've had for so long. I didn't want to throw away the manuals because I know that trying to find them in good condition now is kind of hard, so at least wanted to keep these guys. Up here, we've got a bunch of various stuff. Boxes for the Jaguar and Jaguar CD, which those are in the bedroom and I have to show off at some time. A couple of spare PlayStation 2s and one PS1, which actually looks really good. Another Dreamcast, a mini PS1, trying to fix the disk drive on that. Still need to do that. Got a small PS2 up here, and got a couple of Christmas bags. In them, those are actually an Intellivision 3 and a original Sega Genesis model that I just have just because. Haven't decided if I want to get rid of them or not, but I may end up doing it once I move eventually. But we'll see how it goes. And then on this side over here, just more stuff in storage that I have, but down here we've got a couple of miscellaneous items. This is my GameCube case I used to have all my GameCube collection on here. I've been trying to, like I said, get away from having these things loose. So I've got it down now. I've only got 12 games in here, and then once that's done, I really won't need a case anymore. And we got a bunch of Super Nintendo manuals in here, along with 4 rental cases full of NES manuals. Really happy to find these. Like, found these with a lot of like Super Nintendo games and that stuff. I only paid $200 for it, so I was kind of happy to get that. A couple of boxed arcade sticks for the PlayStation and Saturn. We got like another Super Nintendo joystick there. Some demo disc and a PlayStation thing full of demo disc, and yeah, I would think that's about it as far as the collection goes. And I just looked at the total. Man, we went to 30 minutes. Sorry if you're expecting a short video, but I don't really do those. So yeah, as a final shot. So yeah, that's my game room collection. Like I said before, it's not everything that I have, but it's a good chunk. I'll probably do a video eventually showing off the other stuff I have in my living room and bedroom. But for now, I think that's a good chunk of everything that I have. So, thanks for watching the video if you made it to the end. Sorry it took so long. Anyway, bye!